how'd you get called up? So what was the pitch like? Did they come up with something before, or just
So it got to the point where I was in developmental a year and a half, and Dusty once said to me, he's just like, "There's no point in you being here," and so it was kind of just like, it's not like we're, like you need to go up, and that's if and so that it got to a point where I think they were just like, they kind of told the office, here's five guys that don't need to be here. We're not developing them. They're ready if you want to use them. And, it was like me, Jack Swagger, Ryan Braddock, Kizarny, Gavin Spears, who became Sean Spears. It's just like, I think, not Fatu, Afa's kid, there was just so many of us that were just, it was pointless for us to be down there to develop us. They weren't teaching us how to wrestle. We were teaching the other ones. And if we wanted us to become whatever we would become, we would need to, and so a lot of us were thrown up and on this sink or swim kind of way. And, which is sad because, we spent all this time, they paid us all this money, and it was just kind of like, let's, DJ Gabriel was another one. They just all threw us on TV. And if we didn't become giant stars within a month, 2 months, 3 months, a lot of us got released.
right?
And, my first match was against Brian Kendrick. He was getting ready to go for a pay-per-view match against Triple H. And it was a 2.5 minute, it wasn't like a squash. Like, I wasn't there as an enhancement wrestler. I was a legitimate contracted wrestler, but it was just there to make Brian look good and fast. And
Right.
so a lot of us were brought up just in that essence. And I was always like, well, that's fine. As long as they don't fire me, I know I'll be able to get myself over through comedy, through wrestling, through something. And the next match, me and Kung Fu Naki were like against Great Khali in a handicap match. So the cards weren't really dealt for me that well.
Right.
Um, and that's hard. That's really hard. But on the flip of the script was I was in developmental. I was just praying to go. Not that I prayed anything, but I was just hoping so much to get to WWE. And
Right.
I remember, like, even after like my first match, which I was so happy, Brian Kendrick, they announced my name in my hometown of Deerfield, Illinois. And I remember Fandango or Johnny Curtis going like, "Hey man, you're in the record books." Not a lot of people can say that, like, you did it, you're in the encyclopedia, you're there. And so, like, I don't take that for granted as a wrestling fan. My 16-year-old self would be like, that's pretty impressive. Um, but yeah, so the career was what it was. It wasn't that glorious. And I don't know, I got fired. I wrestled Umaga. He was coming back. He squashed me in like a minute. I had to redo the match, and I think it was my fault, but I don't know what I did wrong. No one ever told me. They literally sent me out to do it again. I'm sure you've heard those horror stories. And so I got sent out to get beat by Umaga, but I thought I did good. I didn't understand what was wrong with it. No one ever told me.
Right.
That was on a Tuesday. On Friday, I got called up while eating Chipotle with Trent Beretta and TJ Wilson, and was told, I'm no longer needed. And I said, okay, can I wrestle on Pro Wrestling Guerrilla tomorrow in LA on a Saturday? And he was like, what? He's like, I don't know. He was so confused that I wanted to go wrestle on an independent show the next day. And then I did. I went and wrestled PWG literally the next day after I got fired. Uh, because I don't know. It's so weird. I might be like the last of these people. Like, I just kind of, when I left ROH and I signed the WWE, I was just like, I hope I don't get fired within a year. Like, so I could have some fresh time off the independents or Ring of Honor, so I can revitalize my career, rejuvenate a little bit. Like,
Right.
I saw it as like kind of territorial ish because I was such a fan of that way of wrestling. So, um, getting fired by WWE, which was the biggest one. And I just, I never looked like Cena or Batista. So I just knew, like, I didn't think, in reality, I didn't think I thought I had the skills to eventually get to become a big time wrestler, but I just didn't think they would ever see me as that. And so, I kind of wanted to use them to then be able to, like, that was 2 years of great pay, and I was just looking to, like, make a living in wrestling. So then I just always assumed I would kind of head back, and it's kind of what happened. Maybe if I had a different mentality, I would have Brian Danielson up that ladder, but who knows?
Any interactions with Vince?
Yeah, I had a meeting with Vince McMahon. I always tell the story of uh, because they were doing this thing where all the young guys getting called up were having meetings with Vince.
Okay.
Uh, and then you would hear these stories of like some people would do really good, some people would do really really bad. And I'm always this will say something. I've always been a guy who's just like just play it safe, play it even, don't do anything dumb. Because I didn't want, like I wanted the giant push, but I also didn't want to get fired. And I always thought like eventually I will win them over. Uh, like I heard a story of there's a wrestler named Atlas DeBone who became Ricky Ortiz. He was another one of
Sure.
those.
Okay.
And I heard his meeting didn't go very well. And and the next, couple months later, he was no longer with the company. I don't know if those are correlated or not, but Johnny Ace was just like, I went up to Johnny Ace. I said, "Hey, I heard these people are doing these meetings. Can I have a meeting?" And I think he was kind of taken back by that. But I was just like, "I'd like to meet the boss, so he knew who I was. So I'm not just some random guy." And I had a little bit of meeting, and he was kind of asking me or telling me, or asking me like a little bit about myself. And I remember telling him I loved alternative comedy, and he's like, "I don't know what that is." And I was just like, kind of like The State. I was like listing off like The State or Kids in the Hall or like, I was just like mentioning this like random alternative comedians and stuff. And he was like, it wasn't Henny Youngman, but he said some like old time
Right.
comedian. And he's like, "Oh, like that?" And I was just like, "Oh my God. Why did I say this? B, he will never understand my style of comedy." And that was kind of a wake up call. And then here's my one regret was he at the end he asked, "Do you have any questions for me?" And I went to business school. I have a marketing degree. And that's like part of the prep, like I didn't realize that this was like kind of like a job interview. I just went in like as a worker telling him my story. And
Right.
he said, "Do you have any questions for me?" And the question I asked was, I go, "Do I really have like, will you really give me an opportunity? Like, will you really give me a chance?" And he was like, "Yeah, of course." And that's kind of where it was. But hindsight, 15 years later, is I think I should have asked, "Do you have a gimmick in your mind that you haven't given to a wrestler that you would love, that you would like to see played out?" Um, and can
That's a
I
great
be that?
question.
Can I be that gimmick?
Right. Yeah. Because
Right?
then he's gonna push you.
Then he's going to give me something that is his
Wow.
idea,
Yeah.
that he would be like, well, at least, because he wanted a ballroom dancer. So he's going to give Fandango a push. Um, and so, you know, and gimmick too, because I'm a character actor, like
Right.
I played the Brooklyn Brawler in the Young Rock. I have my SAG-AFTRA card. I am an actor, and I've always been like a goofball, fun guy, comedy guy. Like I can play a character. And I would have loved to have, if whatever he would have, I would have loved to deep dove and made it the best. When I wrestled for a show called Wrestling Society X on MTV,
Sure.
and they were like, "We're going to use these for season 2." And I said, "Well, I need to be in season 1 because I wanted to be on the show and I wanted to work." And they're like, "Well, you can just be a generic wrestler. Just have a mask and be a generic wrestler." And I was like, "Oh, okay, that sucks, but I'll do it because I want the money and I want the experience and I want to
Right.
be on MTV." And so I made up this character, Matt Classic, which became like a very beloved underground hit, which was a 19 like 20s wrestler with high waist trunks, and I had the big chest, and then all of a sudden we started doing black and white vignettes, 20 years, 15 years before Tony Storm was doing it. And I had the kettleball, this was before Simon Gotch was doing that stuff, so
Right.
like I made something out of nothing. I think I'm very good at making something out of nothing. So I would have loved to have made something out of his nothing that he would have given me.
How did you come up with Scotty Goldman? Did you come up
They
with it?
gave it to me. Come on,
Yeah.
man.
You just
Like,
you just showed up and they said tonight your first
correct.
match. Yeah.
Yeah, with all my Colt Cabana gear,
Mm.
you're now Scotty Gold. I think the story goes was, they were like, "Hey, we've called up this guy. He's Jewish." That was like the only thing they had, and they say, "Is he really Jewish?" And he's like, "Yeah." And all right, call him Goldman, and that was all right. Scotty Goldman is your
Is he
name.
really Jewish?
He's really Jewish. And he asked me that. It was the one time I made him laugh in that meeting with him. He goes, "Are you really Jewish?" I go, "Well, I mean, I'm not like." I go, I'm not a super Jew, but I'm Jewish. And he was like, huh. I made him laugh for that. So, but I would have loved to have, that was the one thing that I thought I had that no, I didn't have the body of some of these wrestlers. I didn't have the height of some of these wrestlers, but something that was different about me was that I was Jewish, and not a lot of wrestlers are Jewish. Not now, and especially not 20, 25 years ago, and even 50 years ago. So I thought like, well, if I have a chance, that's what it will be. And we were trying to do the Israel market, and I could see them selling, Goldman yarmulkes or whatever. And I thought if I had a chance, it would be using that in some way. And it didn't, but that's what I always thought there, in this cartoon world of the WWF, WWE, that would be it. So
Another thing I thought you had going for you when they hired you is everyone wants to be a badass. Everyone wants to be tough. Everyone wants to be, an ass kicker. Not everyone wants to be the funny guy. Not everyone wants to have egg on their face. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like that
yeah.
that's a talent right there. It's a
And that,
talent to know that role and embrace that role. Like you would have.
yeah, so I think what got me actually called up was the writers came down to FCW, and they, first of all, 10 wrestlers got to do a promo in front of Vince McMahon. And I was like, why the fuck can't I? And so I just got in line. And I remember Dusty going, get the fuck out of the line. Get the fuck out of the line. What are you doing? Because here's this guy just getting in line. And, he's like, if you make me look bad, I'm going to look bad. And FCW will look bad and I'll get fired. So I was like, oh, fuck, fine. Because they always say, like, take a chance, step up.
Right.
So I was like, all right, fuck
Right.
it. I'm getting in line. Fuck this. And so I did it. So the next day we did a promo for all of the SmackDown writers, which was like Michael Hayes and Brian Gewirtz and all these guys. And my promo was it was something along the lines of like I want to be the next great, not just sports entertainer, but sports Jewish entertainer. And I listed all off these people like Seth Rogen. At the time it was 2007. Seth Rogen and Andy Samberg and Adam Sandler and Jonah Hill. And I was just like, this is what entertainment is. It is these young, funny Jewish comedians. So like, let's get in the game together, friends. Here we are. You have one of me. Like, we have all of these things. I'm this,
Right.
and this is very cool in Hollywood right now. I think they were like, oh wow. And so yeah, I pitched it as like I am Jonah Hill. I am Andy Samberg. I am your Scotty Goldman or Colt Cabana at the time. And then yeah, within a month, I was up on the roster.